At midnight tonight, the United States government will be headed towards a shutdown. This is the first time the U.S. government has been shut down since 2018. That was the first administration for President Trump, and he shut it down for 35 days in order to get funding for his border wall. President Trump is again at it because he says that this is a move that we must make. Just listen to this.
I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see.
One thing that you need to understand about what's happening right now is that a federal shutdown is going to cause a lot of problems. But according to many officials from the Trump administration, they are saying that this is a needed event. We can't continue to allow Democrats to spend all the taxpayer dollars on things that are not necessary. Now, here's something you need to understand. There is a threat against the United States, actually multiple threats, some of which are coming from foreign actors, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, Iran, right, Venezuela, it doesn't matter. But that is one threat. Here are a couple other threats. Look at this right here. It says Imelda and Humberto deliver double threat, dangerous surf and coastal flooding for U.S. back-to-back hurricanes for Bermuda. The United States on the East Coast, keep in mind, we're in the Atlantic hurricane season. And this hurricane season extends from June 1st through November 30th. So we still have 2 months left. But the concern is that what happens if the federal government is shut down and the East Coast gets hammered with one of these hurricanes? Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment. I want to play something else for you, though, in regards to this government shutdown. Listen to this.
Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said after the meeting that it would ultimately be up to Trump to make the final call.
It's now in the president's hands. He can avoid a shutdown if he gets the Republican leaders to go along with what we want.
Keep in mind what he just said, that it's up to President Trump, because if he can get the Republican leaders on board with what Democrats want, Democrats don't hold the power in the House, in the Senate, or in the Oval Office. We have Republicans in the majority for the House of Representatives. They have 53 votes in the Senate, which means they need 7 Democrats to jump on board to pass a continuing resolution or a government funding bill. And obviously President Trump is in the Oval Office. So Democrats have no power here. That's the concern. Listen to this.
So both sides really dug in there, and Trump so far has not weighed in on what he would like to see with the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And at this point, we're already seeing signs of exactly what we're going to expect in a shutdown situation. Bureau of Labor Statistics confirmed yesterday that if there is still a shutdown on Friday, we're not going to be able to get job numbers that could impact data collection. And of course, guys, that's just one of hundreds of things that could happen as we go into a government shutdown.
Yeah. Not only are we not going to get job numbers on Friday, we're not going to get a CPI report. We're not going to get a lot of numbers, a lot of the data that we use to make changes or to determine what we're going to do next. We're not getting those. I want to keep reading this to you, though. Look at this right here. It says, Imelda strengthens into a hurricane as U.S. coast feels impact. Bermuda prepares for twin storms. Now, we did learn that Hurricane Imelda was kind of turning away from the East Coast, which is good news there because this is what we were being told. Okay, this is the rip current risk. So you can see it comes all the way from Miami all the way up here north of Boston. Okay, that's what we were expecting. So again, that was extremely concerning. But I want to read you why it was so concerning, because we've seen this before. Okay? It's nothing new. We've seen hurricanes on the East Coast. Okay? It's nothing that we haven't gone through before. But I want to show you something. It says, what happens if a hurricane makes landfall while the government is shut down? That was the question I got from many people over the past 24 hours. Is after I talked about the government shutdown just yesterday, many people reached out and were asking, well, what happens with the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration? And I pretty much told them the same thing, that there's going to be some efforts to help and obviously caution and warn the American people. That's first and foremost. But as far as cleanup, as far as assistance, there could be delays. I want to read this to you. Look at this. It says 2 massive tropical systems swirling off the southeast coast are a stark reminder that a potential government shutdown looms during the middle of the Atlantic hurricane season. It says weather forecasters at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and disaster response specialists at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, are planning to keep working during the shutdown. And that's something that we already knew, that they are deemed essential, so they'll continue to work. It says, as has been the case for previous shutdowns. But a lapse in government funding is still likely to disrupt storm preparedness and response efforts for hurricanes and other disasters. It's not just hurricanes. It's also fires. Here in Washington State, we have some wildfires that are still going on. One of which is pretty much shutting down a very important pass called Blewett Pass here in Washington State. And a lot of people are being disrupted by this. So that is concerning. But what happens if the federal government shuts down? Do we continue to see firefighters flown in from other locations to help fight this fire? That we don't know. Let's keep reading this. It says both NOAA and FEMA are entering the shutdown in weakened states, having shed experienced staff since the start of the Trump administration. At the National Weather Service, which is part of the NOAA, managers are working to plug gaps in staffing by hiring new forecasters and moving some meteorologists to particularly short-staffed offices. And I've said this before, that what we were going to see is some of these workers are going to be shuffled around in order to find a good use for them to make sure that they are as efficient as possible. That's essentially what's happening. Now, I want to show you something else, okay? Look at this right here. It says, a meeting in the Oval Office doesn't appear to have lessened the chance of a partial government shutdown, with both sides leaving the gathering saying no deal is in the immediate offing. It says by Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, it says, we have very large differences. I don't know what the next several hours are going to look like. According to reports out this morning, we are not going to get an agreement. There will be a vote later on today in the Senate, but according to reports, there's no way this is going to pass. Republicans are going to push their bill forward and hope 7 Democrats jump on board. As of right now, it looks highly unlikely. So a government shutdown is coming. But what is this going to look like in the next week, in the next 2 weeks, in the next month? That's the big question. And as of right now, we have no answers. So all I can tell you is that when the federal government shuts down, things like the response time of a disaster, it's going to take longer. Trying to get cities and certain locations prepared, it's potentially not going to happen, or it's going to be very modified. So keep that in mind as we go through the next several weeks. If the federal government stays shut down, it's going to impact every single one of us. We're going to see the TSA. They are going to continue to work, do their jobs because they're deemed essential. But the problem is there are going to be additional cancellations from flights. We are going to see some flights delayed. That's going to happen. We could see airlines get overbooked. So that's a concern. And then at the same time, parks are going to be shutting down. And potentially, we could see some disruptions there. So we'll see what happens over the next several weeks, but that's what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.